And welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here each and every week talking to interesting people and discussing topical issues. And today we've got one of those big entities that people have heard about, but they always, I think, have opportunities to learn more and more and really appreciate this organization.
Yes, we're going to be talking about the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation with its president, Dr. Prescott. He'll be coming back for another visit with us. But by the way, before we get to that, Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much.
To you and your family and our viewers. Great. We've titled the show Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, Great News. We've got some good news that the foundation has received recently that we want to share with our viewers in case they missed it.
They are making quite an economic impact on Central Oklahoma. OMRF, Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, our subject today on The Verdict. Stay with us.
Every day America uses clean-burning natural gas instead of coal or oil is a day of victory for our environment. That's why Chesapeake chose to explore for natural gas exclusively, and we've never looked back. Because natural gas burns twice as clean as oil or coal, and reducing carbon emissions to combat potential global warming is every bit as urgent as cutting our dependence on energy imports. As America's #1 driller of new gas wells, Chesapeake is moving fast to find untapped reserves of natural gas here at home. It's the right fuel for America's economy and the fuel for a clean air future. We just happen to be early to see it so clearly. Chesapeake, natural gas wins the day.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Back for a second visit with us on The Verdict is Dr. Stephen Prescott, the president of the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. Dr. Prescott did his undergraduate work at Texas A&M and got his MD degree at the Baylor College of Medicine. He's authored more than 250 scientific articles and journals. He has previously served time in an administrative capacity at the University of Utah, where he served with great distinction. We are pleased to capture him and bring him to Oklahoma. He began at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation in 2006. This is his second visit to The Verdict. Doctor, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, it's been about a year and a half since you've been on the show. Kind of get us caught up to date. What's the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation? What's happening?
Well, it's been a wonderful 17, 18 months since I've been here, and I wish I could take credit for a lot of the successes, but of course they were in place.
Go ahead and take credit.
Sure, why not?
That's all right.
Of course, many of them were long since in place before I arrived, but we've had a wonderful year, actually, or a year and a half. On the scientific discovery side, these range from very, very basic discoveries about how our bodies work, how the cells divide and when they should and don't divide when they shouldn't, and of course that underlies all of what goes wrong in cancer, and many other sort of deep understandings of who we are. So that we do that at the one end of what we do, all the way through to taking things out to where they really help individual patients. For example, in this past slightly over 12 months now, 2 new medications were approved for use in the United States through the process of the FDA that were discovered originally at OMRF. So 2, and out of a total of around 20, 23, 24.
What do those drugs do?
Well, one of them treats abnormal coagulation in young children who have an unusual form of blood clotting, excessive blood clotting, and this medication prevents that. It's a life-saving drug. Now, that's a rare problem, but it's a life-saving treatment. We actually believe that treatment will be tested in other types of abnormal blood clotting, and the uses may be expanded for that. The other one treats, again, another rare problem, typically found in young people, although not always. It happens in grown-ups too. And you're going to love this name, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's one word?
3 words.
3 words.
But,
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I mean, words only a lawyer could love, right? But,
May love but can't spell.
it goes by PNH, you can see why. Yeah. And again, it's a relatively rare disorder. But this is a life-saving, it's an antibody that comes in and blocks the process that goes on, discovered at OMRF about 16 or 17 years ago. So, I mean, all the way from very basic discoveries about how our body works to really practical things that save lives in individuals. And then even another really exciting one is on the diagnostic side. Again, work that's done many years ago, trying to understand how the precise risk of breast cancer, which is often encoded in our genes. And so with this test now, which is through a company spun out of OMRF called Intergenetics, they've either just received or they're just about to receive full approval to market this breast cancer diagnostic that will tell a woman her lifetime risk of breast cancer very precisely. Not, we can say on average it's about 1 in 10, 1 in 9. For every woman, this will say, it's much higher than that or it's much lower than that, and very accurately. So we've had a really wonderful year, and it reflects the history of the organization of beautiful, elegant science all the way through to the practical aspects of how does it help people.
At what age would a woman be administered that in order to get that determination?
That's a great question, and there are a lot of really interesting ethical issues that go around this, and this company, Intergenetics, has done a wonderful job as they've rolled this out, talking about how a physician should advise a woman, what should you talk about before you have this test, because obviously if you tell somebody that they've got a really, really high risk, you want to be able to tell them, well, what do I do now, right? And so there needs to be a plan to go with it, and conversely with a low risk. So I think the recommendation would be someone, in their late teens, early 20s. You could because it's a DNA-based test, you could do it earlier. Mm-hmm. It's just the issue of what would you do practically speaking, and why do you want to tell a 12-year-old what her risk is?
What is the actual mission of the OMRF? In a sentence or two, what is the entity supposed to do, and what is it you all try to accomplish?
Well, I think that we have a new slogan in the last year, and I think it sums it up: discoveries that make a difference. And so we do medical research. Now we define that broadly, trying from understanding how do we work. And sometimes that doesn't lead to anything practical. It just tells us how we work. But we're always looking for what causes disease, and then how can we change that? How can we diagnose it earlier? How can we suppress it? How can we treat it? So very practical applications of understanding how human health is maintained.
Tell us about your staff. How many scientists actually do you have working?
Well, we have a total employee base of about 530 or so. It changes a little bit, and we're growing, but in that ballpark. And then we have what we call principal investigators. That's a kind of a strange term for most people. It'd be called, a project leader or a group leader or whatever in other industries. And we have now, I believe the current count is 53 or 54 of those. Wow. We've been growing a little bit there. And they would have, on average, you see about 8 to 10 people who would be affiliated with them. And they're responsible for picking an area of research investigation. I don't pick that. They do. And develop it. They seek outside funding from various agencies, National Institutes of Health, for example, and we're very successful there. So it's a pretty good sized group, and of course we're on a path to grow that substantially larger.
Expansion project heading your way?
Yes, we think there's certainly a lot of need, as you know, for additional work in medical investigation, trying to continue to lower the burden of disease. Made progress, but there's still a lot of it out there. There's opportunity because of what we've learned in molecular biology and the great revolution in the last few years of what we know, the Genome Project and so forth. So we believe that we're well positioned to lead that into the future, and we're going to approximately double the size of OMRF over the next 7 or 8 years.
My goodness, where does the funding come from? I know some percentage comes from the federal government. I assume some comes from other government entities. What's the breakdown?
Well, as you know, we are a private entity, and so we're not part of any governmental agency.
So you receive no federal money?
We do receive federal money, but
okay.
on a competitive basis. So actually any entity could apply for this money. Now, typically it's universities and nonprofit organizations that compete for these grants, but even for-profit businesses can do.
And what government agency puts those grants
The great bulk of our funding comes from the National Institutes of Health, whose mission is to fund research relevant to human health.
And that's funded by Congress?
It is. Okay. So the NIH in the aggregate probably has, I think this year, around $28 or $29 billion. And about half of that or so stays in Washington at the main campus of NIH, and the other half goes out on a competitive basis to research labs all over the country.
Well, what makes one grant better than another? Is it reputation? Is it the idea? Is it the doctor's reputation?
Well,
how do you separate yourself?
In theory, in principle, it should be the idea, the quality of the idea, and then, of course, to a certain extent, the track record. Is this a person who's shown that he or she can really get it done? And it's called our system of peer review. So you're judged by other scientists from around the country, and they serve on committees that do this, rotating committees, and it works very well. Now, it's not working. The perception is not working so well right now because we're in a terrible financial crunch in that research. Only about 10% of grants are getting funded now, of approved grants. If the idea is thought to be worthy, only 10 or 15% of them are actually getting money because money's so tight.
We need to break in here and get us to a break. We're visiting with Dr. Stephen Prescott. He's with the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. A lot of great economic news for the community is coming out of OMRF, and a lot of medical advances as well. Kent and I'll be back with Dr. Prescott right after this.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a flood nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and Dr. Stephen Prescott with Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. Kent, where do you want to go from here?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that new expansion project that was announced recently with $15 million coming from the state and the other dollars coming from other sources. What will that do for you?
Well, it'll let us realize this opportunity of all these, research projects we'd like to take on, places that we think that we can make a difference in people's lives. Both in their physical health as we make these discoveries and in the economic health of our community. So what the key
But
to
it won't be grant money. It won't be money.
It won't. Now, because the grant money is for programs, for the actual project that's done. And it's extremely competitive. Now, we're really proud that our scientists are so competitive that we've got a very strong grants portfolio. The average amount of grants per investigator is one of the highest in the country. Of all places, big universities, famous universities, we're right at the top as far as the amount they bring in per capita. But that's not a stable source of revenue, and it doesn't provide the infrastructure. So we have to have the infrastructure, which is both laboratory space, sophisticated equipment, and such to enable those programs. So that's what this will do. It will really do, the development program has got several pieces. So the key is always people, getting the right people, right? So we need to find those individuals who are going to be the leaders in the thoughts and the research of their areas over the next several decades, right? and recruit the best and brightest. So we need a package to get them here, to fund their research programmatically for a year or two till they get their grants in place, and then we got to put them in a research lab. Now, our labs are full right now, completely full. We're actually leasing space over at Presbyterian, and fortunately we have the Presbyterian Health Foundation here with their wonderful facilities. But then of course we have to build new laboratory space. So
Would you do it at the current site?
We're going to use our current site. We've acquired some additional property from the University of Oklahoma, where the Key Speech and Hearing Center is. Now they're going to relocate to a new building, and we'll use that land to build a new research tower, which will connect into all of our current buildings. So we're excited about that over the next few years. So it's going to be a multifaceted project, simultaneously recruiting the best and brightest wherever we can find them, and then constructing space to house them, with the idea that if we can do this all seamlessly, in about 5 or 6 years from now, we'll all be done. Or, well, maybe not 5 or 6 years now, but more like 7 or 8, I think. Yeah. But it'll be quite a logistical challenge.
Obviously, jobs are being created. What type of jobs are these?
Well, so these would be everything from those scientists themselves who are going to lead these programs, to research technicians in their laboratories, to technicians who would maintain the instruments, all sorts of things. Then, of course, we have to have all the support functions, such as accounting and human resources and so forth, that support this operation. So they're, if you will, very sophisticated positions, require highly educated workforce, and are very high-paying jobs. Our projection is that they're substantially above the average wage for the metropolitan area.
What can we expect from OMRF in the short term? What kind of new announcements can we, 6 months from now, what can we expect to hear?
Well, we all have our fingers firmly crossed for announcements in about 6 months. You may have seen it several months ago. We announced that a medication discovered by Dr. Jordan Tang, working in Alzheimer's, had started clinical trials. So the first phase of those clinical trials is underway. We're optimistic that it's really going to take safety, that's going to be judged to be safe. Then the next phase will begin to look and see whether it's effective. So we're hoping that 6 or 9 months there'll be the next phase of those tests for Alzheimer's disease. Obviously something that could have an impact in improving the lives of people suffering from Alzheimer's would be extraordinary. And so that's the one that we're all hoping and praying for 6 months from now. We have several other exciting discoveries, one by one of our a joint project, one of our young scientists, one of our senior ones, work together to try to improve the efficiency of how you could have bone marrow transplants in young people. So you may have heard about saving the blood from the umbilical cord in case a child needs a transplant of that type later on. Well, they've discovered a way that dramatically improves the efficiency of that. That's important practically because there's not many cells in that cord, and often they're not enough to do the transplant. So this will expand that. So there's all the way from, again, the sort of high-tech way to do blood transplants to a revolutionary medication. Fingers crossed that it works.
And I assume you have longer-term goals. Let me make this a two-part question. Who determines those long-term goals, and what are they?
Well, I think they're tough questions. Yeah, I mean, certainly
do you have a board of directors that establishes a vision?
We have a very distinguished board. So that my first answer was, with respect to the specific scientific issues, that's for me and my senior scientific folks. We have an external board of scientific advisors that all weigh in on what we think are the opportunities out there scientifically and medically. Then we have a very distinguished board of directors drawn from all across Oklahoma, since we are historically an Oklahoma-wide organization. And we have directors from across that. And so I engage in a lot of discussion with them. We have a very strong committee structure that's really governed by committee of that board. So we talk regularly about which directions, and I get, it's a distinguished group, and I get plenty of feedback from them. So the general idea of making an impact is tremendous support on the board. Then exactly where we go, they tend to leave up to me. Now we have some distinguished physicians on the board. They often have ideas or suggestions, but they're, in just a year and a half, I found them remarkably good to work with, and that they don't get in and meddle with day-to-day affairs. They set directions and standards and vision, and expect the management to execute on that.
How can the average Oklahoman watching this show today help at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation?
Well, I mentioned that we were founded by a statewide effort. Actually, it was a 77-county effort to get the initial funding for the OMRF, and we've enjoyed the generosity of Oklahomans throughout that time. So I hope that continues. I hope that we continue to be worthy of that sense of trust. We've been good stewards with the money, what we've been entrusted with, and we'll continue that, and I hope that remains. We get wonderful gifts literally almost every day. Maybe several weeks ago you saw there was an article in the paper about a gift of a collection of toy soldiers that's going to be auctioned, and we'll use that to support research. So we get gifts like that. We want people to participate in our clinical research. If it would work for them to give a blood sample if we're looking for a disease, maybe to consider being in a clinical trial that we're running, because of course that's a tremendous resource for us. And then lastly, of course, we always need money to run these programs, and so if people have the extra money that they want to put to a good cause, I'd encourage them to consider us. You can get a tax credit, where you get your Oklahoma state taxes. In addition to a tax deduction, you also get a tax credit. So it's the most cost-effective place to put your money.
We have just less than a minute to go. What's your relationship with the state of Oklahoma? We talked about the federal government relationship. How does it work?
Well, we have a very positive relationship, but we're not any agency of the state government. But we've had tremendous support from the legislature, from the governor's office, from throughout the state government. Good working relationship. I think they have been favorably impressed with our ability both to impact health, but also to create an economic opportunity. And so it's why then from the Opportunity Fund contributed the $15 million to help us with our expansion. Not that we're an agency, just that we're seen as someone who can help build jobs.
Build jobs, and a lot of housing going in near OMRF.
Correct.
Too. It's exciting to see. Dr. Prescott, thanks so much for what you're doing for Oklahoma and our community, and thanks for coming on The Verdict.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. We are wrapping up a show on the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. Today's guest was Dr. Stephen Prescott, and they've got a lot of good things going on over OMRF.
Well, they really do, and it's kind of a jewel that not a lot of people know a lot about, but it's located right here in Oklahoma City, and they're constantly doing good things in our community, not simply here, but nationwide. The discoveries they're making are earth-shaking and probably under-publicized considering their merit.
I suppose that's true. You know, they compete in a very competitive environment going against research foundations and universities across the country, yet they're able to get these grants. Billions of dollars are available, and they're bringing literally hundreds of millions of dollars into the state of Oklahoma, funding a lot of jobs, as well as the medical side and the beneficial side of increased and worthy health care.
Yeah, Dr. Prescott told us off camera that while they're now at approximately the 500 person level on employment, they expect to be at the 1,000 person level after the conclusion of this $125 million project.
I don't doubt that. We have a website. If you'd like to get more information on the OMRF, you can go to their website at omrf.org, omrf.org. Or if you have an idea about a show you'd like to see on The Verdict, go to our website, theverdict.tv. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.